r/2x chromosomes. _triggered_cabbage says, what's stopping women, especially unmarried and childless, from just not doing stuff around the house? There's been a lot of discussion on the internet about how women are taking on the vast majority of household labor. I'm curious to hear your experiences about how this process of taking on such labor works, especially for those who live with their partner, but are not married, and don't have kids. I'm a 23-year-old woman who doesn't really know how to cook, and barely cleans/does housework. I'm attending professional school, and living with a roommate, and usually my room is in shambles, but I'm okay with that. If I were to move in with a male partner, what's stopping me from flat out refusing to do more than my fair share, or cooking the shittiest food ever, or using a bunch of his money to hire help and buy expensive takeout, or throwing a massive fit/breaking up with him if he's not pulling his weight? Are people just giving in and accepting their partner's laziness? I can understand, if you have kids then you can't just neglect the children's well-being, so if he doesn't help then you gotta do it all. And if you're married then it's not that easy to just break up. But if no kids and not married then wouldn't it be easier? The only thing I can think of is, if you can't afford to move out and live on your own, so you're dependent on your partner. I've never been in a relationship and I've lived a relatively privileged and sheltered life, so my perspective is obviously limited, but I like to think that, if I were in a relationship, I would have zero tolerance for someone who treats me like a servant. Is it inevitable, or can it be? TwoXChromosomes says, some guys just don't pick up the slack if you stop doing it. A lot of women try to do exactly what you suggest, but the end result is just that no one cleans or does laundry. If no one does that, it'll be a health hazard real quick. It's a matter of if I don't do it, then no one does. Another thing is pressure from their spouses, or straight up arguments, and fighting if they're not doing most of the work around the house. Vampire Librarian says, exactly this. If you do your share, 50%, then guess what? The house stays at 50% clean. I've tried this a lot lately because I'm so sick of it all, but now I'm getting depression from how bad the house always looks. Then you get into arguments where they say, all you do is nag. My half-hearted weak attempt, cleaning is never good enough anyway, so I'm not going to do it at all. Well, give me a list of what to do. TwoXChromosomes says, oh, the constant complaining about the nagging, I feel you. My ex was like that, ex for a reason. Like seriously, if they lived like adults no one would nag. With some guys I've literally had to teach them how to clean. It was a drag. Medusa Melly says, for me, I have standards for living I won't sacrifice for a man. I'm in the middle of divorcing my husband after I got a bunch of bad advice from therapists and our mothers too. Just stop cleaning up after him. Well, then me, my pets and my mental health suffered for a year and now we are divorcing anyway. Pointless experiment. Don't be less for a man. Be extra. Keep your home so clean you can eat off the floors. But throw the man out. Lesson learned. _triggered_cabbage says, I definitely agree that letting the home get out of control messy should not be the permanent solution. I'm glad you are getting yourself and your pets out of that situation. MMMMMMMMMMM234 says, 1. Because she will get judged by outsiders far more than he will. Dirty house. Must be the woman's fault. 2. Because shitty food and a dirty house ruins her living experience just as much as it does his. Who wants to eat crap food and live in a disgusting place? 3. Because gender socialization affects women just as much as it does men. She's been told her whole life by society that it's her job more than his, and it's hard to deprogram, even if she wants to. 4. Because he won't see the error of his ways, no matter what strategy she uses. Because he doesn't want to change. 5. Because she will be portrayed as the nagging wife, the biatch, the crazy person, and the gold digger if she spends marital money on a house cleaner. 6. Because maybe she doesn't think, on balance, that she can find a better guy. So many of her past partners have been even worse. Sometimes she just gives in and thinks, well, this is a tolerable level of unhappiness, because in her experience a guy who does 50 to 50 is 1 in a million, and at least 60 to 40 is better than 70 to 30 or 80 to 20. r/2XChromosomes. Regret Civil says. Guy never asked me to be his GF. We've been seeing each other for 5 months. We hang out 2 to 3 times a week every week. We say I love you, text all the time, he buys me foods I like, buys me whatever really. But he never calls me his GF. I don't want to ask him lol. What do I think? Luminous0 says. Asking for clarification is always okay. Darkthemsby says. Ask for clarification, also it's okay if you ask him to be your boyfriend. Theoretical Rasak says. Talk to him about it. There's really no other option. Bleag_2 says. Context is important. I know my partner and I have difficulty sometimes with the boyfriend and girlfriend terminology given that we are well into middle age. Like 52 and 42. We laugh about it. But more than anything else, a conversation is in order I'd think. Big Buddha Bud says. And honestly if he does all the work, but doesn't want to commitment or the label it's better to know now, so you can decide if this is the right situation for you, or if you need something different. Better to know than be left wondering. Spock says. Why don't you ask him, rather than waiting for him to ask you? International Perk 459 says. I understand everyone here is advocating that you ask for clarification, but I've personally known too many men to think you'll get a clear answer, as opposed to some cop-out, like I don't believe in labels. What we have is very special regardless, and doesn't need to be labeled, or don't I make you happy, isn't that all that matters? Everything I do for you? So I've just got to advocate that you don't stress it, and don't commit to anything that isn't reciprocal. From seeing repeated patterns of behaviors from males, I tend to think he would be desperate to call you his girlfriend, and would have asked already if that was what he wanted. I also tend to think men lie at the drop of a hat whenever it suits them, so it's best to let their actions do the talking for them. Medusa Melly says. Lol, same situation here, but we have hung out every day for more than 7 months. He says he loves me and sleeps over 4 to 5 times a week but says I could never do a relationship again. Bro, I don't want a relationship right now, but the irony of his statements is too rich. I'm gonna dump the whole man soon if this keeps up. Be honest with yourself, my dude. Double Short Depresso says. Girl, dump him now. Artred Mizzou says. Wait 6 months. He will ask you to move in. Move in. Wait 6 more months. Get pregnant. Have your first kid. Build a house together. Wait 2 years. Have another kid. Wait 4 years. Have another kid. Raise these kids together. When they graduate and move away, spend your years traveling. When you get old and one of you is on your deathbed, ask him, are we girlfriend/boyfriend? r/2XChromosomes. Rara_Riles says. My boyfriend told me he's willing to get a vasectomy and I can't stop crying. Some background. My first form of BC was the arm implant, which was horrific for my mood and cycle. Next, I decided to try a 5-year IUD. My doc was very kind, but after an hour of failed insertion, he deduced I must have a folded uterus, which makes the pathway of insertion a little more obstructed. With my permission, he even tried using a tinaculum to see if positioning the cervix differently could help. It was pure agony, and I was crying for the entire appointment. I was determined to make an IUD work, so we scheduled another appointment for another attempt. At the next appointment, I took Valium to see if being more relaxed would help. He still couldn't get it in. His last resort was to locally numb my cervix with an injection to see if that would help. That did the trick at helping things relax enough, and the IUD went in smoothly in the first numbed attempt. I'm glad we eventually got it in, because I've had drastically fewer symptoms with it. My ex-husband was there for the entire experience and supportive, but that leads me to this next piece of background info. When I was with my ex-husband, we always intended to have children after school and more financial stability. I once asked him, hey, when we are done having kids, would you be willing to get a vasectomy so I don't have to be on hormonal birth control anymore? His response was along the lines of, no way, I don't want doctors to touch anything down there. And that was the end of the conversation. That was very heartbreaking for me, because in my mind, at that point, I will have put up with years of birth control, pregnancies, and childbirth. Why couldn't I have a break? Why was I the only one responsible for carrying out our family planning? He understood how minimally invasive vasectomies are, and still refused the entire idea. Even after seeing how much pain and side effects came with dealing with hormonal BC, he wouldn't budge. We never had any kids in the 6 years we were together. I've been divorced for a couple of years now, and have been seeing my now boyfriend for most of that time. I already see him as my life partner, and I'm very in love and committed to him. He was also previously married, but had 2 kids, which he sees a couple times a month. Whenever we've talked about the prospect of having kids together, he doesn't feel drawn to have more, but if I decided I wanted to have kids, he would be open to it. This is a great situation for me, because as I get older, my desire for kids actually lessens, but I'm very aware of the strength of biology and there is always room to change my mind in the future. He is also very pro-choice, so if an accidental pregnancy did occur, he would fully support any decision I made. Now to today. I'm 29 and my 5-year IUD expires in 3 months and I've been stressed. Do I replace it? Do I try to learn about natural family planning, which would be nice to be on no BC, but has a huge rate of human error? Do we resort to condoms? He would be willing, but I'm the one who doesn't love them, and then the prospect of a vasectomy popped into my head. We've only been together for 2 years. Is that too big of an ask? He's been so supportive, maybe he would be open to it? So with him very aware of my expiring IUD situation, and all my previous traumas, I asked him. Without hesitation, he responded, yeah, that's fine. I was like, are you sure? And he just kept confirming that it was a really good idea for us. I immediately broke down with so much relief and gratitude. Finally, some of the burden of family planning can be lifted from me. Finally, I have the safe opportunity to experience life without adding extra hormonal interference. Maybe my period will finally be regular. Maybe not. I know it may not be life-altering, but I'm still excited to not be on birth control for the first time in 8 years. Note, I'm very aware that vasectomies are not a 100% guarantee. That's where having a partner who is on the same page in all the what if scenarios is important. I also understand that in some instances, vasectomies are not reversible. Again, communication is. Healthy Sun 2712 says, I was amazed when I first started seeing my husband because he already had a vasectomy and it was so relaxing in so many ways to not worry about getting pregnant. Made sex so much more fun having that last bit of worrying gone. Math is Magic says, I'm so happy for you op. It sounds like you have a partner who's on the same page about you about what you want with life, but who is actually paying attention to your struggles in this arena and is willing to take a step that your previous partner wasn't. I can't imagine how relieving and moving that must be. Ed_MG says, had one recently and it was the best decision. Slow 125 says. Had my vasectomy 6 months. Best decision me and my partner have ever made. Besides getting married, maybe. Wiramix says. I can't imagine what that wave of relief must have been like. I'm so happy for you too. Best of luck. Outside Thought 3414 says. My husband had vasectomy in the late 80s after we had kids. He straight up felt it was the best option for us both. He would also assure friends the process/recovery was not a big deal. Balsoutsely says. I assume you have a Mirena IUD if you are saying it expires after 5 years. The expiration date was originally set by the FDA for licensing purposes, but that doesn't mean that it won't work longer than 5 years. If you are not developing any questionable symptoms, there is no reason why you can't keep your IUD longer. I had mine for 8 years before my adenomyosis symptoms came back. Best advice, talk to your gyn. Sifoxy says. That's awesome. I plan to get a vasectomy for myself and my partner in a year or two, up to her when she wants to be done with her form of birth control. It makes logical sense. It's essentially non-invasive, the recovery is minuscule, and it's something that can be easily reversed. We don't plan to have children, and it would have much less of an impact on me than oral birth control/IUDs have on her. Wish there wasn't such an odd stigma surrounding it among males/men, and I've educated any person I've met who speaks nonsense about the procedure. I think it boils down to misinformation and toxicity surrounding the procedure. Smockhead B says. If you really want to leave the parenthood chapter open for a few more years for you and your partner, then you should discuss having some of his genetic material collected and stored for IVF should his vasectomy become irreversible at a later date. Most doctor will discuss and mention this option before booking the procedure, but having the time to discuss this option before his appointment is always helpful when making such important family decisions together. Fuey Ring 5 says. Like bruh, maybe get past the boyfriend stage before promising a vasectomy. That's all for this video, thank you for watching, please subscribe.